Stop scrolling, teacup bar aft raised hand. Because what I'm about to reveal could completely change how you look at the coins sitting in your pocket. What if I told you a simple 1-cent coin, something most people ignore, could actually be worth $900,000 or even more? Sounds unbelievable, but it's real. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of the Lincoln Wheat Penny, one of the most iconic and valuable coins in U.S. history. First introduced in 1909, this legendary coin was created to honor President Abraham Lincoln. On the reverse, you'll see the classic 2 wheat stalks design. Simple, but hiding some of the most valuable secrets in coin collecting. But here's where things get really interesting. In 1943, during World War II, most pennies were made from steel to save copper for the war effort. However, a few were accidentally struck in copper. And today, those rare 1943 copper pennies are worth hundreds of thousands, even close to $1 million. In this video, we're revealing the top 3 most valuable, rare, and expensive Lincoln Wheat pennies ever discovered. Coins collectors would pay a fortune to own. We'll break down rare D, S, and no mint mark coins, the difference between steel versus copper pennies, valuable mint errors and double dies, and how to spot a penny that could change your life. And here's the crazy part. Some of these coins look old, dirty, or completely normal. But in reality, they could be hiding life-changing value. Let's get started. Coin number 1, money bag magnifying glass tilted left. Doesn't look rare at first glance, but hidden inside its design is a mistake so powerful, it turned an ordinary penny into a legend. This is the 1955 Lincoln Wheat Penny, and its story is not just about value. It's about one of the greatest minting errors in history. Go back to 1955, a time when life felt steady, predictable, and inside the United States Mint, millions of pennies were being produced for everyday use. Nothing unusual, nothing experimental, just coin after coin being struck with precision. The Philadelphia Mint, which didn't use a mint mark at the time, was producing huge quantities of these coins, all meant to look exactly the same. But something went wrong. Not a small mistake, not something invisible, but something so dramatic that even an untrained eye could see it instantly. During the minting process, a misalignment occurred in the die used to strike the coin. Instead of a clean, single impression, the design was doubled. Not slightly, not faintly, but in a bold, unmistakable way. The date, the letters, the words Liberty and In God We Trust, all appeared twice, shifted, overlapping, almost like a shadow frozen into metal. This wasn't subtle. This was obvious. And yet, thousands of these coins were released into circulation before the mistake was caught. Imagine that moment, bags of freshly minted pennies leaving the mint, moving into the world, entering cash registers, stores, and banks. People began to notice something strange. Coins that looked wrong. Coins that seemed blurry, doubled, almost like they were misprinted. Some thought they were damaged. Some thought they were fake. And some, a very small number, realized they were looking at something special. That coin became known as the 1955 double die penny. And it changed everything, because unlike many rare coins that require magnification to understand, this one could be seen instantly. You didn't need tools. You didn't need experience. You just needed a look. And what you saw was unforgettable. Now imagine finding one of these coins in your pocket change back in 1955, not knowing its future, not knowing that decades later, collectors would search for it, pay thousands for it, protect it like a piece of history. That's what makes this story so powerful, because it started as a mistake. And that mistake became one of the most famous coins ever produced. Now let's talk about value, the part that captures attention. You might hear claims that a 1955 penny is worth $200,000 or more. That number is shocking. It creates excitement instantly. But here's the truth you need to understand clearly. Not every 1955 penny is valuable. In fact, most of them are common. A normal 1955 Lincoln wheat penny with no errors is usually worth only a small amount above face value, depending on condition. The real value, the real story, belongs to the double die version. And even then, value depends on condition. A worn example, one that has been used for years, may still be worth hundreds or thousands because of its rarity. But a coin in high-grade condition, sharp, clean, with strong doubling and minimal wear, can reach much higher prices. These are the coins collectors compete for, the ones that stand out not just because of the error, but because of how well they survived over time. Think about how rare that combination is. A coin created by mistake, released into circulation, used by people who didn't realize its importance, and somehow preserved in near-perfect condition. That's why these coins are valuable. Not because they are old, but because they are rare in a very specific way. The 1955 double die penny is more than just a coin. It's proof that even in a system designed for perfection, something unexpected can happen. And when it does, it creates a story that lasts for generations. It also represents something deeper, something that connects collectors around the world. The idea that value is not always obvious, that something small, something overlooked, can become extraordinary if you know what to look for. So the next time you see a 1955 penny, don't ignore it. Don't assume it's just another coin. Hold it under the light. Look at the date. Look at the letters. Check if there's any doubling, anything unusual, anything that stands out. Because while most coins will be ordinary, just one, could be different. And that difference is what turns a simple penny into one of the most iconic coins in history. Next up, the truth is far more interesting. This is the 1943 D. Lincoln wheat penny, a coin born in the middle of global crisis, when even the smallest piece of metal was part of a much bigger story. Go back to 1943. The world was deep inside the chaos of the World War II. Every resource mattered. Copper, the metal normally used to make pennies, was desperately needed for war equipment, ammunition, wiring, military tools. So the United States Mint made a decision that changed the look of American coins completely. For 1 year, pennies would no longer be made of copper. Instead, they would be struck from steel, coated in zinc, giving them that unusual silver color. And just like that, the familiar brown penny disappeared. In its place came something that looked almost like a dime, light, shiny, and completely different from anything people were used to. The 1943 D penny, produced in Denver and marked with a small d, became part of this dramatic shift. Millions were made. Millions were spent. And at the time, nobody thought they were special. But here's where the story begins to change. Because when something looks different, people notice. And when people notice, questions begin. Some people kept these coins because they looked unusual. Others rejected them because they felt cheap or confusing. Over time, many were lost, damaged, or worn down. The zinc coating faded, the steel underneath darkened, and what was once shiny began to look dull and rough. Now imagine holding one of these coins today, not bright and new, but worn, darkened, maybe even rusty. To most people, it looks like a damaged coin, something with no value. But in reality, it's a piece of history, a direct connection to a time when the world was at war and even a penny had to change. But here's the part that creates the biggest shock, the part that turns this story from historical into legendary. During the transition between copper and steel, a few mistakes happened. A very small number of 1943 pennies were accidentally struck on leftover copper blanks from earlier years. These coins look completely different from the standard steel pennies. Instead of silver, they are brown like a normal penny, but with the 1943 date. And that is where the real value exists. Because those copper 1943 pennies were never supposed to exist. They are rare beyond imagination. And when one appears, collectors pay enormous amounts to own it. Prices can reach hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes even more, depending on condition and authenticity. That's where the idea of a $300,000 penny comes from. Not the common steel version, but the extremely rare copper error. Now think about how easy it would be to miss something like that. A brown penny with an ordinary look, mixed in with thousands of others. Most people would never check the date. Most would never realize what they're holding. And that's what makes this story so powerful. Because the difference between a common coin and a life-changing discovery can be something as small as the metal it's made from. But let's be clear about reality. A normal 1943 D steel penny is not worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Most are worth a small amount, maybe a few cents to a few dollars depending on condition. Even in excellent condition, they don't reach extreme values. The true rarity, the true legend, is the copper version. And there's a simple way to begin checking: a magnet. A standard 1943 steel penny will stick to a magnet because it's made of steel. A rare copper version will not. That small test, that simple moment, has been the starting point of some of the most exciting coin discoveries in history. But even then, caution matters. Many coins are altered, plated, or changed to look like something they're not. That's why real collectors rely on careful examination and expert verification. Because when something is rare, people try to copy it. The 1943 D. Lincoln Wheat Penny is more than just a coin. It's a symbol of a world under pressure, a moment when even money had to adapt to survive. It tells the story of war, of resource shortages, of human systems that are never completely perfect. And in that imperfection, something extraordinary was created. So the next time you see a 1943 penny, don't ignore it. Look at the color. Test it with a magnet. Pay attention to what most people overlook. Because even if it turns out to be the common steel version, you've connected with a piece of history. And if it's something more, then you're not just holding a coin. You're holding one of the rarest stories ever struck into metal. Next up, the simplest coins carried quiet pieces of history. This is the 1951 D. Lincoln Wheat Penny, a coin that feels ordinary, but becomes far more interesting when you understand what's really behind it. Picture the early 1950s, a world stepping out of the shadow of the World War II, economies rebuilding, industries stabilizing, and everyday life returning to a steady rhythm. Inside the United States Mint, coins were being produced in massive numbers to support daily commerce. The Denver Mint, marked with a small d, struck millions of pennies in 1951, all designed to look exactly the same, all meant to move quietly through the economy. And that's exactly what they did. The 1951 D penny entered circulation without excitement, without headlines, without anyone stopping to admire it. People used it for small purchases, dropped it into jars, carried it in pockets, and over time, most of these coins became worn, scratched, and faded. To the average person, it was just another penny. Nothing special, nothing worth saving. But here's where the story begins to change. Because in the world of coins, ordinary is often just the surface. Underneath, there's always the possibility of something different. The 1951 D. Lincoln Wheat Penny was produced in large numbers, which means most examples today are still common. A typical worn coin, the kind you might find in old change, is usually worth only a few cents. Even in better condition, many are worth just a small premium. That's the reality most people don't hear when they see dramatic claims about huge values. But coin collecting has never been about the millions. It's about the exceptions. Now, imagine a 1951 D penny that somehow escaped decades of wear, a coin that was set aside early, protected from damage, preserved almost exactly as it looked the day it was struck. Its surface still has detail. The wheat ears on the reverse are sharp. The portrait of Abraham Lincoln is clear and strong. Compared to worn coins, it stands out immediately. That difference, that level of preservation, is where collectors begin to pay attention. But even that isn't always enough to create extreme value. Because the real turning point, the real shift from ordinary to extraordinary, comes from something unexpected. A minting error, a variation, a detail that shouldn't be there, or something that doesn't look exactly right. During the minting process, even in a controlled system, small imperfections can happen. A die might crack, leaving a raised line across the coin. A strike might be slightly off-center, shifting the design. Letters might appear doubled, not perfectly aligned. These are not common, but they are real. And when they appear on a coin, they create something unique. Now, imagine finding a 1951 D penny with one of these unusual features, preserved in strong condition, clearly different from the rest. That's when collectors take notice. That's when a coin begins to carry a story beyond its face value. Let's talk about the number that grabs attention. The idea that a 1951 D penny could be worth $300,000. It sounds powerful. It creates instant excitement. But here's the truth you need to understand clearly. There's no widely recognized, normal 1951 D Lincoln wheat penny that reaches that kind of value. Most coins from this year, even in high condition, do not come close to that number. Extreme prices in the coin world are usually connected to very rare errors, unique characteristics, or coins with exceptional and documented significance. And that's the key point. Not every coin is rare. Not every old coin is valuable. But some coins under very specific conditions become special. The 1951 D Lincoln wheat penny is part of a much larger story, a series that ran for decades, a design that became one of the most recognizable in American history, a symbol of everyday life during a time of recovery and growth. It represents stability, simplicity, and the quiet role that small coins played in daily transactions. And today, those same coins still exist. Not locked away in museums, not hidden in secret vaults, but scattered across the world in collections, drawers, and forgotten places. That's what makes this story powerful, because the possibility, even if small, is still there. Not the promise of instant wealth, not the guarantee of becoming rich overnight, but the chance that something ordinary could become meaningful if you take the time to look closer. So the next time you see a 1951 D penny, don't ignore it. Hold it. Turn it under the light. Look at the details, the condition, the small features most people overlook. Because even if it turns out to be just a common coin, you've done something different. You've paid attention. And in a world where most people don't even look at what they hold, that simple act is where every real discovery begins.